guys, Rebecca here, and thank you so much for stopping by today on my new podcast, Zoospiracy. Like, seriously, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to give this a try, and I really hope you enjoy it. Today, I am trying to step back into the world of the animal industry and apparently into true crime. I have sort of a love-hate relationship with both, so I thought, why not put them together? I've spent a long time trying to figure out where I fit in the animal world as a creator, and honestly, for a while, I didn't think I fit really anywhere anymore, but I'm optimistic that this might be it, and I'm excited to finally give it a real shot here. I really wanted to make this podcast to honor the animals at the center of these stories, to spread awareness for their conservation and species, and of course, to keep you engaged enough to stay with the story until the end. Not through shock or theatrics, but through truth. And since absolutely nobody asked, here's a little more about me. I have a lot of animals, a lot of ambition, some ADHD, and a lifelong fascination with strange situations, strange people, and the uncomfortable stories that tend to fall through the cracks. I spent years in the animal industry and animal media, and I eventually lost all the love for that space. Not because of the animals, but because of what the focus became. The people. The good, the impressive, the gross, and the genuinely unhinged, all in the same space, creating content with animals. So this podcast is my attempt, I think, back in without losing the point entirely. Some crimes leave no bodies, others leave no justice, and some leave victims that never get to speak. This is Zoospiracy, and new episodes are going to be dropping every Friday. You guys can find me on all platforms under the name Zoospiracy, and I've also created a Patreon for extended episodes, early releases, deeper dives, and exclusive content. When I decided I wanted to do this podcast, I knew immediately what my first episode was going to be about, and today's case is close to my heart. This is Justice for Jasmine. Before we begin, listener discretion is advised. This episode includes descriptions of animal cruelty and injury. Please use caution for listeners under the age of 13. Before we talk about the crime, we have to talk about the species. Galapagos giant tortoises, of course. Galapagos giant tortoises are among the longest lived vertebrates on Earth. Some individuals live well over 100 years, long enough to witness multiple generations of humans come and go. No, seriously, if you have one of these animals, you have to put it in your will. The species evolved in isolation for millions of years on islands. Depending on the island, shell shape, body size, neck length, and behavior all vary depending on the terrain and food availability of the natural habitat. These differences aren't just simply cosmetic, they're actually like evolutionary records. Ecological reconstructions estimate that more than 250,000 giant tortoises once lived across the Galapagos Islands. And that number matters because it really tells us what we lost. From the 1600s to the 1800s, whalers and pirates removed these giant tortoises by the tens of thousands. Ship logs describe stacking them alive in hulls upside down. They could survive for months without food or water, making them an ideal living food storage. A single voyage could remove hundreds of these animals. Charles Darwin himself documented how common it was to eat tortoises during his expedition, not as an atrocity, but as a routine. By modern estimates, over 100,000 giant tortoises were killed or removed during this period. Entire island populations vanished and several subspecies were erased completely. Later, introduced animals like goats, pigs, and rats destroyed vegetation and nests, which accelerated their collapse. By the early 1900s, giant Galapagos tortoises were functionally extinct on multiple islands. The animals alive today exist because a different type of human intervened. not a total evil piece of shit that watches an animal slowly die. This matters because conservation is not a singular line. It's not just owned by the governments. Zoos are not the only experts, and ethical animal commerce is not inherently evil. Public institutions, private keepers, veterinarians, breeders, scientists, all of the above contribute. And in many cases, if not most, private sector husbandry has driven the advancements in nutrition, incubation, growth modeling, and long-term care, knowledge that is often later adopted by public programs. Of course, every industry has those who exploit, and there is a dark side to the animal industry that we will explore in this podcast. While some exploit, others can still make money doing what they love while advancing the species' survival. And this can overlap with conservation, but they're not always the same thing. In this rare and exotic world, rarity attracts attention, and sometimes that's the wrong kind. I've worked with giant tortoises for several years, and once you've worked with them, you really stop referring to them as a tortoise because they really have personalities, preferences, routines. Some are very bold, some are cautious, some are stubborn in a way that feels almost intentional, but they recognize their caretakers, their routine, they respond to consistency, and you can always notice if something's different because they're individuals. Which brings us to Jasmine, the giant Galapagos tortoise. According to the Phoenix Police Department incident report, on June 7th, 2021 at approximately 2:33 a.m., two unknown male suspects entered the fenced residential yard of Jerry Fife. The report states, quote, "A male had come into the complainant's yard and attempted to take his tortoise." Security footage shows a dark-colored pickup truck already parked inside the fenced yard. This detail feels like it really matters because obviously they didn't just stumble in and panic. They were already past that barrier, which showed this was premeditated and planned out. Police noted, quote, "They used their truck headlights to illuminate their way. Two suspects exited the vehicle and walked directly towards one of the tortoises grazing nearby." To be honest, I'm not sure how accurate that part is because by this point, they're usually asleep. So maybe it was asleep in the yard and this is how they documented it, but this is strictly my opinion. The report continues to say that they positioned themselves on either end of the tortoise, later identified as Jasmine, and attempted to lift her. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever attempted to lift a giant tortoise. Now, of course, they look big to the eye, but when you try to lift these things up, they are like solid lead. I mean, it is basically like a giant rock, okay? And these puny, weak fucks clearly didn't have enough strength to lift her up to steal her. So you can imagine what happened next. This was an attempted theft, but Jerry was alerted by his security system and came running outside, yelling for them to stop. The report continues to say that, quote, "This interruption startled the suspects and they immediately dropped the tortoise and ran to their truck." Now, I'll be honest, when I reviewed the footage, it looks to me like it's a man and a woman, although the police report identifies them as two men. I don't know, but if you guys get a chance to check out the footage, let me know what you think. I'm sure this moment actually felt like a glimmer of hope to Jerry, Jasmine's owner, because it should have probably been where this story ended, where Jasmine was alive and well. The report continues to say that while fleeing, the driver made an immediate U-turn and ran over the tortoise. Officers later described what they found was, quote, "a very large Galapagos tortoise, approximately 4 feet in length, with a completely broken shell. Large chunks of shell were scattered and the inside of the tortoise could be seen." Most of you probably do know this, but turtles have their spine fused to that shell. So they literally are their shell. It has a lot of feeling and nerve endings, and it's actually a very thin layer of keratin, which is the protein that makes up our hair and nails. So this is basically like one big fingernail is what their shell is made of, and right beneath that is bone. And so this is a very sensitive structure and, the biggest part of their body. They're actually the only animals on Earth to have a shell like this where the spine is completely fused. Let's get back to the details of the police report. The report states the suspects did not stop to render aid or check welfare on the tortoise as they fled the scene. Obviously, because they're horrible people, they didn't slow down, look back, or anything. They just left her there. Now, when I viewed the footage, it looked like they attempted to do some sort of 3-point turn, although the police report describes it as a U-turn. If you guys, again, get a chance to look at the footage, which is released and online, let me know what you guys think. Jasmine weighed over 200 pounds and was approximately 27 years old at the time. Jerry had owned her since 1994 when she was a hatchling. You guys, these giant tortoises start out so small. It's kind of like an acorn to the oak tree. It's just incredible how quickly they grow and just how sturdy of an animal this is. Now, during this incident, Jasmine was immediately transported to an emergency exotic vet in Arizona, but her injuries were absolutely catastrophic, so she was humanely euthanized. Later, officers returned to the scene to collect evidence. One report states that, pointed in the grass, there were many pieces of tortoise shell, and Jerry told me that was pieces from Jasmine, and I was able to take one if I wanted for the case. The officer selected a piece roughly the size of 2 fists. Another note in the report reads, "A piece of Jasmine's shell will be treated with the utmost respect." I feel like that line really matters. Just shows how different we are as people, right? The case was investigated as animal cruelty and third-degree burglary. Police recovered vehicle fragments left behind during the collision, and surveillance footage from both the Ring cameras and Jerry's phone was impounded. Investigators identified a suspect vehicle eventually, which was a Chevrolet Silverado, based on grille patterns, push bars, and plate configuration. DNA evidence was also collected. Many tips were submitted, and public attention did surge, and this did go quite viral on social media. But as with most exotic animal cases, it faded out. No arrests have been made, no charges, and no public identifications. The report notes that Jerry desires prosecution. Of course, I'm sure this still stands as Jerry was absolutely devastated by what happened to Jasmine. This story is not an indictment of ethical ownership or anti-conservation or private ownership or any of those things. It's a reminder that when rarity meets money, animals become especially vulnerable. The police wrote in their report that Jasmine was estimated to be valued at $50,000 for her age and size. Most people in this space are doing real, meaningful work for these species. But the consequences can be permanent when you enter this industry. If you have any information related to this case, please contact the Phoenix Police Department. Tips can be anonymous, and even the smallest details matter. At the time of this recording, this case is still open and unsolved. If you're interested in learning more about animals like Jasmine, please consider supporting legitimate, science-driven conservation organizations, and remember that conservation doesn't happen in just one lane. I really think that most of us in this industry have overlapped several of the pieces and parts of this industry. And like I said before, it's not simple. Tortoises are symbols of survival. They've survived mass extinctions, climate shifts, and near erasure. What we know from this story and from this species, the giant Galapagos tortoise like Jasmine, is that conservation works, and that matters. Thank you for staying with this story today on our very first episode of Zoospiracy. Thank you guys for caring and listening. If you've made it this far, you are the best. And thank you for holding space for animals who can't tell their own stories. This is Zoospiracy, and I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you check in on all of our social media accounts where you can find us at Zoospiracy, and consider supporting us on Patreon to get exclusive content. Thank you guys so much for being here. I truly hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have a story that you'd like to share with us involving an animal, relating to crime, mystery, superstition, or just your own personal experience, we'd love for you to email us at zoospiracy@gmail.com. All right, guys, thank you so much for checking out this episode. I wanted to keep this one kind of short, and I don't want to say sweet, but just short and to the point, because it is like 4 a.m. on a Sunday night, and I have to work tomorrow, my regular job. So I really hope that you found this entertaining and maybe enjoyed it a little bit. And I really hope you come back for episode 2, because it's already in the works and it's even crazier than this one, dare I say. I'm Rebecca, and this is Zoospiracy. We will see you guys next time. Stay wild and stay loving animals. I'll see you guys next time, and that's the case. Thank you.